And I want to move to some of the athletes that are actually over 50 into 60s, 70s, 80s. And I want to talk about how what we've discussed so far can influence a person's life and health span for the whole duration, 0 to 100, 0 to 150. Who knows how long we're going to live anymore.
Yeah. So I think it kind of set up earlier, a little bit I touched base on earlier, doing the things that you do early on influences, and if you can continuously stick it out, is going to influence what happens over time, right? Think about if you're playing the stock market, right, and you do it over the course of 30, 40, 50 years, and you do it well, what's your bank account look like in 50 years as opposed to 5 or 10 years, right? Now, that being said, you still have to do it well, right? And if you don't know how to do that, you do have to have some experimentation. You got to figure out some things on your own, but at the same time, you need someone or something that you can trust that helps support and guide you along that way. One of the biggest ones you're going to see is bone density, right? You can still see great results. If you've never strength trained, you're 70 years old, you can still see great results in terms of improved bone density by strength training. But especially for a female, this is really interesting. I heard Andy Galpin talking about this recently on a podcast. We're starting to see more individual research geared at females. And especially, female research gets difficult, especially time of the year and certain metrics we're working on around their hormonal cycle, right? But he said that we actually see a huge drop-off but a huge increase in bone density if you start strength training in your 20s or younger and maintain it through life. As you get into your 30s and you don't start after that, you can still see, again, significant improvement. So I don't want to steer anyone away from it's too late for me, but if I can start now and I'm, before 30 years of age, I'm setting myself up at 70, 80, 90 years old. Again, if I do it relatively well to, live a better life at 60, 70, 80 years old, I can, hopefully handle the falls that may happen or occur. I can handle the stress of picking up my grandkids off the ground. But if I don't have the ability if I don't start focusing on my 20s, I see some diminishing return. I can't see as much improvement if I start in my 40s or 50s.
Right. And it goes back to those foundational movements, doing them consistently, programming them in a relevant fashion, regardless of the activity in your life. Like, how many times do we hear, "Oh, I just don't have time."
Yep.
And it's like, well, like you're only going to get more of what you're currently getting if you're with what you're doing, which could be true with work, career, family, etc. And if it's working for you, that's great. But there's some things that aren't optional. As I'm training people in sales and negotiation, for instance, you have to do all 5 phases of selling, of negotiating, of influencing, or it's not going to work. Period. You don't get to choose. I think a lot of times when you don't prioritize for energy, agility, mobility, strength, health, you get the bone density problems, you get the coordination, it literally goes away. It's the foundation upon which all of the other things are built. And it's so easy how we defer to, I got stuff with my kids, or I got stuff with my wife. And it's there's just no spot for it. And it's just, you don't know what you're mortgaging. It's the reverse stock market. It's literally, you're taking all the money you put in out before you even need it. You're like, man, why do I feel like such garbage? I'm only 50. I'm only 60. Anymore, it's going to be, I'm only 70 and 80. And you're going to be like, unfortunately, I might have 40 more years in this husk of a body. I think people are starting to wake up to that. I think it's easy to see for the 37-year-old gentleman who had the heart attack and all these other things. You have that happening on one end, but I'm seeing a reawakening at these later stages that I got to do something about this, and people are taking action.
One of the biggest things we see improvement in bone density on is axial loading. So actually loading the spine or loading the body. Using, it doesn't have to be a barbell, but, doing some form of a deadlift, of a squat, or putting weight on the body or in your hands that you have to stabilize the core and the trunk and keep it tall and rigid, and get it to move through these different planes of motion. And so, but the more that you use or implement, I would say the more, but the better you balance and implement axial loading, oftentimes we're going to see better improvement in that bone density as well.
That's awesome. Load up, everybody.
That's right.
So,